Tetris Attack for Game Boy is an adaptation of the Super Nintendo release of the same name, itself a rebrand of the Super Famicom release paneled upon. Because calling it Yoshi's Puzzle Game Thing isn't appealing enough, or either that or Americans hated cute things back in the 90s. In any event, the Tetris rebrand didn't stick for the eventual sequels, which would eventually be better known by its more localized title, Puzzle League. Anyway, the core gameplay of Tetris Attack, Puzzle League paneled upon, whatever you want to call it, the core gameplay involves flipping tiles around and clearing them from the playfield by lining up 3 or more of them down or across of the same type, all the while more tiles start to rise from the bottom. In ideal situations, you could try for chain combinations that will not only clear more tiles from the field, but this could also freeze the tiles in place for a short amount of time, giving you a chance to clear out any tiles in the current playfield. As par for the course, if the playfield overlaps with tiles, the game ends. A lot of the play modes that were on the Super NES version of Tetris Attack is also featured on this Game Boy port. You still have your endless time trial versus and stage clear modes among other things, and they all function as you'd expect them to. In case of the versus mode, however, since you obviously cannot see the opponent's playfield due to the Game Boy screen, your progress in defeating your foe is determined by hit points and power meters that will fill up to summon the next attack. It's a rather clever way of managing a versus mode against the computer on Game Boy, and it works fairly well. Tetris Attack is deceptively brilliant in both concept and execution, a straightforward idea that is easy to understand, simple to get into, yet somehow manages to be an engaging and challenging little puzzler as you move along, whether it be against an opponent or under conditions and settings that you yourself set into options prior to game start. The puzzle mode also provides a bit of a challenge for those who want it, and also serves as a nice means of teaching the player the rules and tricks of the trade, as it were. Control is simplistic and straightforward, and they work for a game like this. In terms of graphics, Tetris Attack feels very rudimentary as far as the main gameplay portions are concerned. When it comes to the menus, they're simple but fair. The intermissions are actually quite nicely done in terms of making the jump from 16-bit to 8-bit, but when it comes to the actual gameplay, the whole thing just comes off as an emulation or simulation of a Game & Watch or a Tiger Electronic handheld unit, where tiles don't move around but rather blink in and out of existence or trading places like an LSD type of display. It's not terrible, and one could argue it's Game Boy, it doesn't have the power to show off moving tiles despite the ever-ascending playfield, but I've seen Game Boy pull off some crazy shit in some games, and visually it's okay, but basic and jarring. Even the Super Game Boy compatibility seems tame, with only a bland border and a color palette that's only slightly different from the default setup. And this is from Nintendo of all people, so I don't know, it's a bit of a letdown on that front. Oh well. At least the sound is pretty good, taking the melodies of the SNES game and adapting them rather nicely here on Game Boy. While there are no minor voice bites for obvious reasons, you do have some sound effects that mimic the cries of the characters whenever you do a good play. It's the effort that counts, I suppose, and it's okay. Not much to say there. Overall, Tetris Attack for Game Boy is a respectable iteration of the Puzzle League formula for its day, and certainly the best way you could have gone for Puzzle League on the go at the time, but it certainly hasn't aged all that well, and it's due mainly to the visual style. Like I said, this feels like an emulation of a Game & Watch rather than a proper Game Boy title, and while the game itself is always top-notch, the way it's presented might turn off a few folks. Still, if you're willing to overlook that particular caveat, Tetris Attack is a good puzzle game on the go, and definitely one worth checking out.